Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by Husky Harry, huggable homos who love film, to dish up a little bit of movie news and review a film either current or classic. This week, as usual, I'm joined by my delectable, delightful, in other words, starting with capital big D's, Jim Poliafkos with us. Welcome, Jim.
You said big D's.
Well, I kind of did. That's true.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, welcome, babe. And Will Lindis is here with us as well. Welcome, Will.
Hey there, listeners. Do you want to build a snowman?
Oh, boy, that is the titular question this week. Wow. We're going to be reviewing the new suspense, ? Thriller ? Film, The Snowman, starring Michael Fassbender, as part of our ongoing suspense / horror / Halloween theme for this wonderful month of October. Definitely looking forward to jumping into that conversation. Guys, we're going to get to talk extensively about a hairy hole. What do you think about that?
What's great is we can do that, and I mean, I think we're already explicit in iTunes, but it doesn't make us any more explicit.
Indeed.
It sounds like it does, but it really doesn't.
It doesn't. No, it is tangential to this particular conversation. We can say hairy hole, a great hairy hole, or maybe a disappointing hairy hole. We can say that left and right all through this episode, and it totally be on point.
Harry Hole was, I mean, when it comes to Harry Holes, this particular Harry Hole was kind of like fast and loose at times. So it's kind of a weird combination. But anyway, sorry, it's, we're Movie Bears podcast, whatever. We talk about dumb things.
Should we all set that up? Because anyone that doesn't know anything was just going to think like, well, what's a hairy hole? Like,
that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing right now.
All right.
So
if you don't know what a hairy hole is.
So the main character of this film, The Snowman, is named Harry, like Harry and the Hendersons, hole, like, a hole in the ground. I don't quite understand the reasoning behind that name. This is based on a book, so anyway. But hey, check it out, guys. We're like 3 minutes in and already super punchy. It's going to be that kind of show, but I'm excited for that. I'm glad for that. A little bit of sad news to report, though, before we get started. You may remember last week we were talking about our excitement over having some folks on to talk to us about Haunters, the Art of the Stare, a new documentary all about some great haunted attractions. We told you guys to check it out in preparation for this week's show. Unfortunately, the director of that film, John Schuster, it was not available after all. Some work stuff popped up at the last second. As someone who works stuff pops up for it the last second all the time, I totally know how it goes. So we are working to get John and Jessica Cameron, our very own Scream Queen Goldilocks, rescheduled. Maybe we can get them in sometime next week ahead of Halloween to help get you in the spirit for going to those haunted houses maybe on Halloween. So look out for that. We'll have some more information hopefully coming out about that soon. Instead, we are going to be taking you to Movie News Town. We've got a couple things. It's kind of a slow week for movie news, but we've got a couple cool things that we kind of wanted to chat at you guys about. So, Jim, Will, what do you guys think? Are we ready for some movie news?
Yeah, like you said, it was kind of a slow. I mean, there are some big things happening in movies, but we are not going down that rabbit hole for the show. We're choosing not to. I mean, partly because we don't have enough time, like we've said, to maybe do this topic justice, and it would maybe just feel like, throwing more noise onto the already noisy environment. So yeah, but we did dig up a few nuggets of entertainment news that we're going to talk about.
Maybe we should retitle the segment Entertainment News. Because sometimes we talk about things that are like movie adjacent, like video games based on movies like Assassin's Creed or, food for thought.
We have a great sound drop for movie news, and we can still use the sound drop for entertainment news as well. But for me, like that particular dun 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 will always be like very, very like connected to the words movie news. So I don't know.
I think we're just gonna call it good. It's our fucking show. We'll call it what we want, talk about what we want, and if it doesn't jive, well, you know what? We're 256 episodes in, starting 257. Maybe we don't care. Maybe it's just fine. In any event, here we go. Some movie news. I agree, Will. I do love that sound drop.
It's one of my favorite things that we do on the show, and it actually. I know sometimes we have double features. And there's a lot of other great things going on, and it's cool that we do those. But just because of that sound drop, it's like it makes me feel a little like, aw, on weeks when we don't have movie news. I should just cue that up as my ringtone. That's what I'm going to do.
That's a great idea. Totally. You could set it for like Jim and I's phone numbers. We never call you except if we like get lost trying to find you at a film festival, but it's a thought that counts.
Maybe I could tie it to like when I get a Facebook Messenger message. Dun, 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 dun,
there you go.
Yeah, it might drive me a little crazy as those as I get, but still.
Yeah. I was gonna say there's some days like in the Movieverse podcast Facebook Messenger thread where we're trading like 70 messages back and forth. That could get old fast. But you know it doesn't get old? Actually talking about movie news. And that's what we're gonna do right now after we say a quick hello to a few folks that are hanging out with us in the live chat. Steve Sosa, I see, is here with us. He says he doesn't want movie news, guys. He wants movie nudes.
New segment starting next week.
We'll talk about super sexy guys and like their naked scenes in movies, and we'll call it movie nudes.
We could flash it up right on the screen here.
We actually totally could do that.
Screen grabs. Just
even without the screen grabs, but bear with me. Like next time we have a week where we've got like what are we going to talk about? Like maybe a segment of our top 3, just like hottest nude scenes in a movie. Like
totally. Well, I think we gave out an award for that last year in our second annual MBP awards. So maybe that could be part of the discussion leading up to that show in January. Maybe. In any event, Jim and I are actually going to share a movie news bit this time around.
We share a lot.
We do share a lot. The joys of sharing life together. Jim, do you want to intro it or do you want me to?
Go ahead.
Right. So we had mentioned earlier, sometimes we talk about things that are kind of movie adjacent. So this next topic totally fits in because it does have elements, I feel, from some of the new J.J. Abrams Star Trek movies, and it kind of blends that with some of the old school feel of Star Trek, the original series. That, of course, being the new Star Trek Discovery series that aired its first episode on broadcast CBS and then moved behind the paywall, the term that's being thrown around, to continue airing its episodes on CBS All Access. It's been, 12 years since we've had Star Trek on TV, the flaming dumpster fire that was Enterprise, and then later Star Trek Enterprise when they rebranded because they were stupid in the first place, left audiences in a very bad place when it came to Trek on TV. So CBS has kind of been doing this series on their app as sort of a test balloon. Our audience is ready for a new TV series after the Abrams movies have been out. And so it's exciting that after just 6 episodes of this new series, less than half of the new season having aired already, CBS officially announced that Star Trek Discovery, or Disco as it's being called for short, has been officially renewed for a second season already. Before this season came out, folks were thinking there was going to be this long hiatus after the first season while CBS kind of tried to decide, like, would the low viewership that was expected be enough to consider a second season? And by and large, I guess viewership has blown away all of their expectations, like beyond all measure. So we've got this announcement for a second season. Jim, obviously, I know you've been watching. Is that exciting news for you? What do you think?
It's definitely exciting news for me because I started watching the show with just out of curiosity. I'm not, I don't consider myself a Trekkie, although I have watched probably most or all of the original series, most or all of the Next Generation, most or all of Deep Space Nine, Voyager. But I'm not like really in. I mean, there's characters and stuff that I probably couldn't tell you the backstory of. Brad, I know you've seen them all probably at least 2 or 3 times, all of these series.
Mm-hmm.
But I do love the new movie series. They've had 2 movies so far, or 3? Three. That's right. I do love it, and this show Discovery kind of has that feel to it. But more than that, what this show has is an increased sense of stakes, I think, in the show, and they established that kind of right off the bat in the first couple of shows. There's like some oh my god moments in there, like oh my god, this show is willing to take, to do the brave things story wise to make the stakes feel real. That's all. I'll just leave it at that without putting any spoilers out there. And also, I think the characters are great. There's very complex characters in here. The main characters are really complex. They're just not all one-dimensional. Like, oh, he's the nice, he's the stoic, nice, reserved, strong captain. You know what I mean? There's very complex characters. So yeah, I'm excited I'm enjoying season 1. I'm excited for season 2. But again, we're only 5 episodes in at this point. So the show's got a long way to go. Hopefully it won't run out of gas or ideas along the way. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. So I'm really excited. And that's kind of why.
Yeah, and I think you're not alone in that, Jim. Ed Chambers in the chat is saying this is one of the most amazing new series like ever that he's seen. And I think to some degree this show takes some lessons learned from Game of Thrones in some ways and Star Trek Deep Space Nine in other ways. When we were at South by Southwest this year, we got to talk to executive producer and showrunner of Deep Space Nine, Ira Stephen Bear, about how sort of Deep Space Nine's long-form arc-based storytelling changed the nature of TV forever. Now we have shows just like Deep Space Nine kind of set off this powder keg, right? That is their main bread and butter, Game of Thrones, right? All of that is just one giant like ball of story arcs that are ongoing. And I see a lot of similarities here with this series. It's definitely got a darker, more gritty tone like Deep Space Nine had, like Game of Thrones has. And Jim, kind of to your point, and we won't spoil, but it doesn't pull any punches when it comes to like killing characters that you're like, oh yeah, this is going to be like the main person serving this role for the whole show. And then it's like the next episode, they're fucking dead. And you're like, wait, what? Did that really just happen? And then it's like, are they going to have their like magic tech and like wave the light like over their, injuries and they'll come back to life? Not this Star Trek, baby. It's not afraid to pull punches. So, Will, I know you're not a Trekkie. I know you've seen kind of the newer movies because we talk about them on the show at all. Have you been hearing positive buzz about Discovery, or like, what's your perspective?
Yeah, so I will say I come into this from a third-hand knowledge perspective. Last time I watched a new episode of Star Trek was The Next Generation, I think. So I'm 100% not the expert on this. But from my Facebook feed, I think that the buzz has been probably predominantly positive. I've seen a few critiques here and there. I think there was one episode where I just saw a lot of like people a little bit checked out comparatively. The others people seem to be pretty buzzed about. I guess there were with last night's episode, there were a bunch of connectivity issues with the app. So I think that's the more, I mean, honestly, when I'm hearing complaints, it's been more around that type of stuff. And for me personally, that sucks. But at the same time, I think it's kind of ballsy for CBS to do this whole paywall, kind of it's on our own platform. But at the same time, I've heard people for years tell me, like, I wish I could cut the cord. I wish I didn't have to pay for all these channels I don't use.
Now you're getting what, now be careful what you wish for,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, now like people have the option to get just the channels that they want. And if they do that with too many of them, then the price gets a little higher. And then we need to bundle them back up to diminish costs. We're right back where we left off. But I like this as a grand experiment with that. And I think that if people continue to support this particular show in this particular platform, I think it's going to lead to a lot of positive things for that network on the whole. If this becomes something that it's obviously popular enough for a second season, if it becomes popular enough that they think that it might be like a kind of a ratings cornerstone on one of their nights, I could see this eventually transitioning over to the kind of the main network. If they think that it could, the grand experiment of the app, like, can move it over there comfortably. So I'm more than anything, I'm interested in watching how all of this plays out.
Yeah, I think just from a lot of what I read before Discovery aired, CBS wasn't willing to put it on the main network full time because they didn't really think anybody was going to watch it. They were very afraid that, like, they put it up there, they'd have to cancel it. It would die a flaming wreck. And now it's really taking off. So, we'll have to see. There's sort of this balance, I'm sure, between the revenue it's generating for them by airing on the app versus like what it could do for them, like with advertising built in, like anchored on the network itself on broadcast. But I wouldn't be surprised to see that as well. Obviously, the paywall has been a complaint. A lot of folks are like, well, I'm not going to watch it, or I'm just going to torrent it. But they're the same folks who were pissed off and bitching that Star Trek hasn't been on TV. And it's like, well, why don't you fucking support Star Trek like on TV then by, tossing some money and making it happen? The other thing, so many people on Reddit are just like incensed, like apoplectic, angry rage that there is a gay couple on this new Star Trek show. And so obviously, we had spoiler alert for Star Trek Beyond. We saw like Sulu holding hands with his husband or whatever. But maybe this takes it sort of that next level. I don't know. Some people seem to have an issue with it. Not really in our community per se, obviously, but the paywall and the gay couple are kind of the two big complaints that I've seen. Well, so
and I've heard a lot of other little things from the like really hardcore Star Trek fans about, the look of this, the look of this certain race of characters isn't kind of what I expected, or they don't look like Klingons, and the ship design is kind of ugly, or you know what I mean? It's like, but
that is true.
I expect to get that. I mean, you can't get a room full of Star Trek fans really to agree, on any aspect of the show. And that's part of what has made this whole big franchise such long lasting, because the fans are just so, rabid and invested and keep the flame going. And now, arguably, this is a great time for, what I was going to say, like, this is a great time for Star Trek fans. You have this series, and we won't talk much about it, but you also have another series going. It's kind of a Star Trek derivative show that, is getting maybe more mixed reviews. I've seen
the Orville you're referring to.
I'm referring to the Orville.
Yeah.
But it's got some good elements to it that I've, when I've watched it, it's up and down. It's way more up and down than Discovery has been, mostly positive. But yeah, the paywall thing, I don't know, man. Like, we're getting to the point where everything's a la carte at this point, and you start buying the content that you want, and pretty soon you're paying the same amount as you are with bundled cable or a TV service. And well, you're right. Maybe we're going to be back in the same boat, just with a bunch of different apps that we select. And I'm with you, Brad. I'm not for the pirating or, I see that on Facebook. and I don't call people out for it on Facebook, but I see a lot of people when we talk about the show, and like this, we talk about the show, and it's like, oh, you got to pay for the CBS app, and they say, oh, no, I'm just gonna go download it for free or whatever on Pirate Bay or whatever the hell they do. It's hard for me not to have like feelings about that, but
I have strong feelings about that.
Yeah.
It feels a little cheap a lot of times when I hear that particular complaint or concern when someone says, oh, it costs me this, I'm just going to steal it. Oh, it's over here and I want it to be over there, I'm just going to steal it. And I don't want to use torrent. I want to use the word steal. Because I mean, that's what it is. It's getting a thing that you do not own and having it for money that you're not spending for it. Right. And my problem with it is that, I mean, especially with this, like I would imagine a grand majority of the people that are probably wanting to watch it would be people that are Star Trek fans, right? Like people that want to see this content. And it feels very much like shooting yourself in the foot. Like, I want them to make more of this thing. I therefore want to support it financially, so they'll make more of this thing. Yeah, I have a problem with that, and especially like, I guess I would get it more if I saw more people just saying, I don't want to pay for it, therefore I torrented it. But I think the thing that frustrates me personally is like when people use moralistic arguments to try to back themselves into justifying it. Like, if you're gonna take it, just take it and be honest with it, with yourselves and everyone else.
So I look at it as Star Trek is helping me lose weight. You want to know how I connect these dots?
Please
go ahead.
Because I'm taking the FPS approach, FRS approach, the Frappuccino replacement system. I figure the $10 a month for CBS All Access is about the price of 2 super sugary Frappuccinos I would probably drink. So, if I cut out 2 Frappuccinos, I get me some kick-ass Star Trek, and maybe I'm a little healthier as a result.
And only one if you do, isn't it like half if you just do the ads, the with ads? So
yeah, it is. I think it's like $6.99 if you have it with ads. Versus $9.99 without the ads. Yeah.
So it's like there's an even $10 is too much a month. There's another version. There is an option.
Right.
Definitely. Yeah, for sure. So season 2, Star Trek Discovery, super exciting. Can't wait to see what else the first season has in store for us. But Will, I know you've got something you want to talk about here as well. So what do you got for us this week?
Oh, what have I got for you this week? So a new trailer just came out for a movie that got me pretty excited. It's this movie called The Phantom Thread. And the reason it has me excited is pretty much twofold. It's the new film by writer-director Paul Thomas Anderson, who I think it's fair to say he's one of the most renowned and kind of well-respected, current working directors. This is the dude that gave us There Will Be Blood and Magnolia and Boogie Nights, a bunch of great films. So The Phantom Thread, the other thing that's so fascinating about this movie to me is it's another collaboration with Daniel Day-Lewis, who we got to see play the amazing Daniel Plainview in There Will Be Blood. So I'm super stoked for this movie. It comes out December 25th of this year. So hopefully I'll get to see it for Christmas
Day.
It's always hard to tell if what the release is going to be like. If this, maybe this will be another like Her from a few years ago, where it was like a Christmas release. I didn't get until the second week of January. But it's got a hell of a little cast. Leslie Manville and Camilla Rutherford are also in this thing, and it's about this dressmaker set in the it's like 1950s London, and he's supposed to do all of these kind of dresses and stuff for high society royal family. It looks like it's a very period piece drama. What impressed me so much about the trailer, outside of just kind of the people who are in it, there's just a lot of great camera work in this thing. It looks to be a very beautifully shot film. I don't know how the narrative is going to play out. I don't know if Daniel Day-Lewis is going to be great Daniel Day-Lewis or trying too hard to be great Daniel Day-Lewis. So That's always a concern for me. But so far,
so
I'm
like
on board.
Lincoln level Daniel Day-Lewis, I think is what you're saying.
Yeah, it's just like kind of like where it's just kind of like, can you just turn it down a notch, Daniel Day-Lewis? Like I don't want that Daniel Day-Lewis, but I like him working with Paul Thomas Anderson, and again, I like the look of what I've seen in the trailer. So far, I'm on board.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brad.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Well, I liked the look of this one as well. I did watch the trailer earlier today. What about the trailer, Will? Can you speak about like what did anything catch you in the trailer in terms of the? I mean, you mentioned it's like 1950s. He's a tailor to high society in London. I mean, that doesn't sound like box office gold. But what about the trailer you think might grab people? I saw one thing toward the end of the trailer that made me think, oh, maybe this dude is a gay dude, and maybe it's about him living a closeted life among these high society people. But I don't know that. I don't even know if it's based on any kind of a true story or if this is totally fiction.
Yeah, you know, I knowing very little about the actual backstory of the film itself, I kind of came to the same conclusion from the trailer. Like, I had this thing where my brain went a couple different things. Like, oh, this is a period romance. Oh, it's a friendship because he's a closeted homosexual. Oh, maybe I'm reading too much into the fact that he has a couple of like lighter affectations and he's working as a dressmaker, and maybe I'm projecting gay upon him. And just that particular thought process going through the trailer made me more interested in this particular character because he came across a little bit of a kind of like an enigma. He's like a little puzzle box that just from that 2-minute trailer, I want to open up a little bit. So yeah, the thing that you said that most interested you is actually right there with me. That's the thing that kind of jumped out of the trailer for me.
Brad, what did you have? You had something.
Oh, I was just gonna say, Will, you were talking about like getting the like too much Daniel Day-Lewis phenomenon. This might actually be his last film after 4 decades of being an actor and being in these movies. Reportedly, he said this will be his last on-screen silver screen appearance. So that kind of makes me sad because I really dig Daniel Day-Lewis when he's not being over the top Daniel Day-Lewis. So definitely interested to see this film for that. If nothing else, maybe raise a glass to Daniel Day for all the wonderful film and character work that he's brought us over the last 40 years. Can you guys imagine being an actor for 40 years? It's crazy.
I mean, I'm at this point in my life where I can't imagine having done anything at all for 40 years. Like, I mean, I'm at this point in my life where the idea of having drawn breath for 40 years still feels like something that I haven't pulled off. So, yeah, this is amazing to think about, just like him having this very illustrious career. And I guess to his credit, having the wherewithal to say, this is my final performance, this is where I'm going to walk away, like this is the one that I'm going to kind of, you know, I'm calling my shot and walking off the court after this one.
Could be his could be his last strong vie for a you know, for that Oscar. That I know he's got, what, how many does he have? I think he's got
all of them.
He's got like 3. He's got like 3 or something. Yeah, I don't know, but
yeah, he's got it. Yeah,
this definitely looks like Oscar baity material for sure. And Will, back on that point about like, is he gay or not? There's one thing right at the end of the trailer where like one of the women in the trailer, like, how come I never see you with any, like, how come you're not ever with any women or in a relationship with women? And he goes to answer her, and of course the trailer smash cuts right there.
Of course, yeah.
So they could be setting up nothing, or it could be kind of an interesting story. Because otherwise, I don't really see I don't see any. I'm trying to find the dramatic tension in the trailer, in the story, and maybe I need to watch it again. But because Sam says it's a really interesting trailer. Sam on chat. Our friend Sam in Denver. He says it's so controlled. I agree with that. And the building of tension is great. I'll have to watch it again to get the building of tension part. I may have just missed that because I was watching it kind of at work. But
we we'll have to see. We're actually going to see Sam and his partner Steve next week. Next week is our annual pilgrimage to Palm Springs for Pride. We're renting a house with like 14 guys, and Sam and his partner are going to be there. So, Sam, definitely looking forward to chatting movies with you while we're there, sipping cocktails around the pool. Can't wait for that. Maybe we'll even get to go see a movie while we're there. What? We'll have to see what happens. But Will, yeah, I agree. Trailer definitely looks interesting. I'm on board. We'll check it out. As the release schedule goes, though, just don't know quite when we're going to have it. But we'll have to see. All right, guys. How do we feel about talking about the Snowman? Do we just want to skip that conversation?
No.
Call it good?
It's a movie we saw. We have to talk about it. Do we want to unpack the movie for the next 4 hours, examining it from every possible element, or just jump right the fuck in and go?
That's the thing. Like this, for me, this movie, I feel like our conversation is going to be a very redemptive experience in terms of how I remember this movie. So the conversation will be therapeutic.
All right. Well, then, before we officially jump into our discussion of the Snowman, let us just say this. If you are on the fence about seeing the Snowman and you want a little bit of maybe some advice and perspective from us, we're going to talk about the Snowman spoiler-free for probably, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes. We'll give you our impressions on whether we think you should see it in theaters, maybe rent it, skip it entirely, and then I will give plenty of like awkward, bumbling, stalling warning for you to step away before spoilers if you don't want to be spoiled. Don't worry, we'll give you that chance to step away or hit pause. So all of that said, feel free to stick with us if you haven't seen the movie yet. Spoilers are not even close to fair game yet. So here we go, our discussion of the Snowman. Hey guys, got a very pertinent question for you.
Got a very pertinent answer for you.
Do you want to build a snowman?
You know,
sure.
You know that thing in the I guess it's the Frosty cartoon where when you put the hat on him, he comes into being, and when you take it away, he presumably dies until next year. Let's take the hat off this one.
Can we just replace the snowman with this snowman? Probably our most favorite snowman since Frosty.
In summer. Yeah, we should do that.
No, because even that snowman wore out his welcome in that shitty freaking Frozen short. Remember that thing?
Short. Yeah, that short was
he basically really melted all of his goodwill with me.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and get this rocking and rolling. Jim, I know you were super excited about seeing this film. Only fitting that you maybe give us the setup for this, the basic plot setup, and your initial impressions. Was this good? Was it not good? Should people see it? Theaters, rent it, skip it? What do you think?
So I was excited to see this movie. I was super excited was my thing. The trailer itself made this movie look like it was going to be right up my alley. It was definitely a crime procedural, a serial killer playing cat and mouse games with a detective played by Michael Fassbender, who we like Michael Fassbender. The director here, Thomas Alfredson, we also like Let the Right One In. I didn't see Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, but I hear that one was good too. And so, yeah, he's got some pedigree coming in. So we got good actors. I hear, and I didn't read the story, but I hear that the novel was very good. The novelization of the story was very good. Certainly nothing that's brand new in terms of the story. I mean, we've seen this stuff before, whether it's, something like The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, or what other, like the Zodiac Killer. Zodiac's one of my favorite films of all time. And this kind of gave me a bit of a Zodiac vibe. And I'm like, okay, even if this one's like half as good as Zodiac, I'll still have a good time with this movie. I didn't expect it to be as good as Zodiac. what we got. So I'm gonna read the synopsis of the movie from IMDb, and this is the funniest. I think this is the funniest one I've ever read on IMDb. Here we go. Detective Harry Hole investigates the disappearance of a woman whose pink scarf is found wrapped around an ominous-looking snowman. That is the synopsis for a movie, which I don't even remember I don't even remember much about a pink scarf in the movie. They make it sound like the pink scarf is like a big plot point in the movie, and it's someone was fucking around with the synopsis there on IMDb. But anyway, here's the real synopsis. So Michael Fassbender, of course, freshly off the warmly received box office mega hit from earlier this year that was Assassin's Creed. Remember that one? I mean, he was.
Oh, that's right.
He's been tearing it up lately. He was tearing it up lately. Yeah. He plays the great Harry Hole, real name, Harry Hole, a highly regarded but backsliding detective in the Oslo Police Department. So he's drawn into an investigation of the death of a young mother during the first snowfall of winter, which feels like anything but a routine homicide. His investigation leads him to the Snowman killer, dun, 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 who continuously taunts and pokes Hole with cat and mouse games. Brad, did you like that in there? Pokes Hole.
I did. That was really good. Yeah, that was a smoking hot pun there, Jim.
Yeah, nice. Anyway, Harry teams up with a brilliant police recruit to try and lure the madman out of the shadows before he can strike again. So that's the plot synopsis without giving too much of the movie away. So this is a weird movie for me. This is not a good movie, number one. First of all, I'm going to tell you right off the bat what my letter grade is for this movie. My letter grade for this movie is a C. It's a solid C, because there were moments in this movie where I thought was good. As a matter of fact, this movie held my attention for the whole movie. Now, there were eye-rolly moments where I turned to Brad and I went, what the fuck was that? Like, I have no idea why that was in the movie. The movie could have been tightened up more for me, but the parts that were interesting enough to keep my attention, and the parts that were bad, some of them were so mind-blowingly bad that they were almost laughable and funny and interesting in their own right, kind of in the other way. So yeah, it's a C for me. I would say do not spend your money and see this out in the theaters. I'd say this is, at best, this is probably wait for it to open on VOD, probably before Christmas, or rent it at Redbox if you're bored. This is a perfect VOD movie. Probably it's got a great cast. I mean, it's got besides Michael Fassbender, it's got J.K. Simmons is in this movie. Doesn't do much, but that's a waste. Wasted his talent in this movie, playing basically just a caricature. One of the characters.
Jim,
what?
Question, just real quick. Given that he was like in and out of the film so quick, did it give you whiplash?
Oh, they did whiplash me a little bit on his character. You're right. This one has also a guy named David Densick, which I was looking at, and I'm like, I know that guy. And he plays a character in a series I watched lately and plugged on the show called Top of the Lake, China Girl. He was a character called Puss in that movie. In that show. Toby Jones is in this. Genevieve O'Reilly. Chloe Sevigny is in this movie. And, of course, Val Kilmer is in this movie out of nowhere. And we're going to talk more about him later. But, yeah, like I said, this movie held my attention. It's a curiosity for me. Not a good movie. I don't know if it's a terrible movie, but I can't recommend it to see it in theaters.
So it's a C for curiosity.
It's a C. Jim. It's a C, but don't C. You know what I mean?
Okay. All right. Will, how about you? Where do you come down?
I'm a couple letter grades lower than Jim on this. This movie, at least for me, was awful. One of the worst things I've seen this year, and there's a few reasons for that. this is a film series that I mean, or the film that probably should have been more interesting to me, because I'm like you, Jim. Like, Zodiac is one of my favorite movies of all time, and I like these like detective, serial killer, like I like that stuff, whether it gets pulpy or not. Like, you know, I can sit down and find something I enjoy in one of those movies. I didn't have that experience here, and that was my problem. I felt like I kept grasping for something, like maybe this character will interest me, maybe this performance will interest me. I like that actor quite a bit. Maybe they'll bring something to me. And every time I tried to grab something, it just slid right through my fingers, and that was a disappointing experience. This movie was a slog to get through. I had ordered food for it, and I wish I hadn't, because I kept fighting the urge to make this one be my walk, like, you know, maybe this will be my first walk out in however long, you know, like it was excruciatingly dull for me. And there's reasons for that, like, you know, kind of on behalf of the filmmaker. Apparently, like, they got the news that they were going to shoot this, and the funding for it, like, kind of last minute. So off they go to shoot it, and then they get back and they realize that they hadn't shot like 10 to 15% of the script, and so now they're trying to cut around that, because this isn't like me filming something in my backyard. This was a kind of an expensive on set, not, you know, expensive is on location
Norway,
shoot,
right? Yeah.
So yeah, it was in Norway, you know, so you have to get all those actors who are not Norwegian actors out to Norway to shoot. So they just cut around the stuff that wasn't there, and that's why this film is very incomprehensible, and not in one of those ways like if it, you know, there's films that are ambiguous that reward critical thinking and reward the experience of you sitting through them and sort of, you know, putting on your thinking hat and figuring things out. This isn't one of them. This film is incomprehensible because they just literally didn't shoot parts of it and just said, well, fine, let's patch it together as best as we can. When Val Kilmer shows up on screen, it's incomprehensible and it adds nothing to the film. But unfortunately, that's kind of the same of a lot of the supporting cast too. People show up in the film and you think they might be important, or you think they might be set up as like, maybe this person's a suspect, maybe they're not. And it was much more just like, oh, this is the scene where this actor is in, this is the scene where that actor is in, and then they're gone, and they don't really matter as much anymore. I struggled to find anything I enjoyed in this film. I feel like this is one that I can't recommend to anyone at all. And so yeah, this one, if I'm giving a letter grade, this is an F. This is like
flag.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I need to find something to grasp onto. I can't even be excited about the cinematography. Like, I think I walked out of this, and this was the first comment I had to a friend, was, at least with something like this, like with all of the snow and all of those shots, like, I could have at least walked out and said, well, at least the cinematography was beautiful. But even it had this kind of weird muddy filter over it that just made everything a little more bleak and a little more dreary than it could have been. So I couldn't have even walked out of it and say, at least it looked pretty. Like, that's my half-handed, or was it my backhanded compliment to a movie? Well, at least it looked pretty. This one didn't even do that. So yeah, this one's a hard pass.
So C from Jim, an F from Will. I don't know that I saw the same movie as you guys. I thought this was fantastic. I can't even keep a straight face for real. No, it's really unfortunate. I don't know. I was intrigued by the trailer. It looked interesting. It has snowmen built by a serial killer, with like eyes made by like putting cigarettes out in it. I'm like, dude, this is gonna be creepy as fuck. This is gonna be awesome. It was not. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I don't want to, you know, repeat the things that you guys have said already. So I'm going to pick a couple of things. I'm going to pick at the Val Kilmer thing for a second. I don't know what's going on with Val Kilmer these days. I know he had some health things, so I don't want to be harsh. But there are scenes where Val Kilmer is talking, but he's so obviously like his voice is dubbed over him like talking on the screen that it's like a bad kung fu movie, guys. Like, seriously, like,
I'm not even sure it's his voice, to be honest with you.
Well, it does sound like his voice, and you should trust me because I watched the new Knight Rider reboot, unfortunately, where he was the voice of Kit. I know what he sounds like, and he had some elements. So I think it was his voice. But I don't quite understand. At first, I thought maybe like we had some kind of issue, like at our screening, like maybe something was going on with the sync. But I went to Reddit, as I so often do these days. I heart Reddit, and a lot of people were reporting the same thing. So, you know, I know that there were some reshoots that were happening. There were some things that didn't make it into the film. They didn't get shot. I don't know if it's a byproduct of like having to do some like voice work with Val Kilmer after he shot what was on screen to make certain scenes fit together better. I have no idea, but it was really, really distracting to me. And then the other thing is, and I know this is not everyone's experience, and I promise this is not me trying to be like a smarty pants, because Smarty had a party and nobody came, but like I figured out like what was going on like halfway through the movie. And so from that point on, all the stuff that's still unspooling and, ooh, let's add questions on top of questions to try and make it more complicated. It's like, oh, Jesus, tap dancing Christ on a cracker, Great Caesar's Ghost. Can we just get this over with already, please? And then finally the movie gets to that point, and we get the reveal, and we figure out what's going on. And then you think, oh, good, like, we're going to have this super tense thing, and all the stuff is going to go down. And then it's like, oh, that was it? Wait, really? Am I watching the right? Can we, like, rewind? Was there another cut of this? So I feel like, you know, Jim, to your point with your C, I definitely see what you're talking about. There are some interesting things going on here. I think it does get a little, like, self-referential, like wanky, trying to be more complicated than it needs to be. It sort of has this, like, I swear to God, like Inception-y, like flashback within a flashback thing happening sometimes. That's kind of interesting a little bit. But I think by and large, Will, I wouldn't say it's an F for me. I'd probably go more like a D-. But it's definitely a hard pass for me, unfortunately.
Will, I wanted to point out something that you said. You talked about the look of the film. I thought many of the shots in this movie were fine. I thought the problem this movie had with its look was its color grading. It was almost like they put a gray filter in front of everything. I mean, the framing and compositions and the actual shots, I thought some of them were pretty great. But yeah, I noticed there were moments where like stuff on the screen was supposed to be dark or black, and it was like this gray thing. Like it just really, it's like a TV that has no black color on it. And that bugged me a little bit from the beginning. But once I got past that, yeah, I don't know why they did that. I don't know if they didn't have time to color grade it right or something, but that's what it seemed like. And as far as figuring out, and Brad, to your point, like figuring out movies like halfway through, I mean, congratulations to people who do that. This is not one that I mean, there were several characters in this movie, like presents to you several red herrings in the movie as far as who could have, and I'm not going to get into spoilers, as far as who could be the murderer, right? I mean, there are several red herrings in this movie. And then eventually, though, by the end of the movie, it's down to like a process of elimination. The movie is basically there's only one person left at the end of the movie that it could possibly be, and that's who it is. But I'll be honest with you, just because I've figured out a movie like halfway or 2/3 of the way through doesn't necessarily make it a bad movie for me. It could still be interesting. This one is not quite there. The fact that I did or didn't solve it, I don't think has a bearing on that for me. But yeah, I don't think it was that hard to figure out who. As a matter of fact, they kind of show you, well, we'll talk about that later. We'll talk about it in spoilers.
And I think for me, it comes down to, like, yeah, this one's pretty easy to peg fairly early on because of some things that they
show you
obvious clues. Well, that too, but before that, like, there's some very obvious clues they drop. But aside from all that, like, that's not the reason I dislike this movie. Right. Although it adds to the equation, like, because I think about, like, when I figure out a movie that I love, I'm excited. I'm like, oh man, I picked up all of the great things that this filmmaker was putting down. I feel like I'm invested in the movie. For me, this one was a really boring watch for me. This was a 3-hour movie crammed into a shorter package. And so figuring it out early meant I just had to sit through more movie until they finally got to the credits, without at least like the pretense of me like getting the whodunit experience. So I think that was my problem. Like, if it were a better movie, like, and I still figured it out, whatever. And another disappointing thing about this, I went back, and if you guys have the wherewithal, this is the 11th. Well, this is the 7th of 11 books by this Norwegian author named Jo Nesbø. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. And they're all very well received. I've heard a lot of people say, "Oh, I really like that series." I went and I read like a synopsis of the book. Haven't had a chance to actually read the book. Just saw the movie. But if you actually read the plot synopsis of just the book, it's a very different story, and dare I say, a much more interesting one. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those ones where I can see why people would have liked this story, and I feel bad for them because I don't think the movie that showed up on screen is going to be representative of the experience they had reading the book.
Mm. Yeah. Well, one thing I'll say here, just to pat ourselves on the back a little bit, which we don't do often, but I think in this case is well deserved. This movie got terrible reviews before we saw it, and typically I try to refrain from like reading reviews and having. I know there's a cat behind me. I was like, you couldn't see it, but I had my hand.
That was camera, a Harry hole,
like trying to hold her back. Oh God, I don't even want to think about that. But anyway, the reviews of this movie were terrible. I tried to avoid them, but I couldn't. But went to see the movie anyway because here at the Movie Bears podcast, we're fans of making our own determination.
We are not afraid. We are not afraid.
Right. And so I just want to say to anybody out there that may be listening, maybe you're kind of on the fence. Yes, even though Jim gave it a C, Will gave it an F, I gave it a D-. That doesn't mean that will necessarily be your experience. So if the trailer looked cool to you, maybe wait till this one is available on Netflix or something, right? And see it as part of your subscription. Edward in the chat actually said the real question, when it comes to Netflix or Amazon Prime for free, is it worth the time? My response is, well, you're paying for Netflix or Amazon Prime, so technically it's not free. But Will, what do you think? Is this worth a Netflix or an Amazon watch?
I think back to just all of the films that like the three of us watched or didn't watch just coming out of Fantastic Fest and South by Southwest. I've seen a bunch of these films that we either watched or didn't watch are hitting streaming this week between Wheelman and 1922 hitting Netflix. There was a couple of films from South by Southwest this last year that just popped up on Amazon Video. And so when I see that quality of film being dumped into these streaming services on a weekly basis, for me to even recommend someone watching this on one of those services when there's so many better options, I don't know that I could even wrap my brain around that part of it. Mm. This was, to me, this was not only a kind of a money waster, but sort of a time waster.
And Jim, you had said earlier that it would, that might probably be like an okay.
This was a film. This would be a film that would pique my interest if I ran across it on one of those services, and especially if you just want to go in and see like what the Val Kilmer shit is about. Like you really just want to see him like talking nonsense for 30 seconds at a time. This might be the one.
Well, there you go. Mm-hmm. Well, guys, we're going to do an abbreviated spoiler section for this movie. We probably won't dive in super deep. But just to check in, Jim, Will, are we on board with spoilers? Are we ready for that?
Let's do it.
Sweet. Okay. So this is the part where I awkwardly pretend to fumble words and ramble to give you time, if you care about being spoiled for the Snowman, to, if you're listening live, go ahead and step away. Maybe come on back in about 15 minutes or so for plugs. You don't want to miss those. If you're listening on digital tape delay, feel free to refer to the handy dandy time index in our show notes and just, skip ahead as needed if you want to avoid spoilers. Otherwise, they are officially fair game. Where do you guys want to start?
I'll start at the beginning. So the opening of this movie is I guess you could kind of say a flashback establishing scene where it actually shows us the origins of the serial killer and the psychopath named, what was his name? I forget his name. No, I don't know. Anyway, it shows him as a child. He basically was an unwanted child from a very distressed home. His mom commits suicide in front of him, and it scarred him to the point where he later in life was taking revenge against women who apparently appeared to not want their children. So that was kind of the impetus behind this. And the snowman thing wasn't super clear, other than he made a snowman the day his mom committed suicide. So he was making snowmen and leaving that as kind of his calling card at every one of these grisly murders. But yeah, I mean, they showed us who it was, but of course we didn't know who it was as an adult. We knew it was a male. So that did narrow it down quite a bit. But yeah, I thought that was a pretty well-worn trope at this point, like to show the killer's like origins. And then at the end of the movie, of course, we end up right back at that same scene, at the same location, kind of returning to his home base, if you will, for the dramatic finale. What did you guys think of that part?
I wanted to care more. It's like, in theory, like if you just told me like, oh, this is a serial killer who, because of some fucked up things in his past, builds snowmen and kills women who don't want their children, and the final showdown happens at the place where his trauma began. Okay, on paper, that sounds fine.
Yeah.
The actuality of it was, again, to me, it was tedious. That the buildup was very, very tedious. We knew too much about who the killer was, especially when there's a female character that's kind of fairly prominent in this one, and she has a few things going on that make you kind of go like, huh, what is she doing? What's her role in all of this? She could have been a fantastic suspect, but she wasn't a suspect at all and couldn't be played for one because we got to see so much of the origin story so early on.
Yeah.
Even the final showdown that happens there at the end was very like, okay, some things are going to happen. There's this kind of tense showdown hostage thing that happens. Yeah. And then it resolves way more quickly than it should have. So yeah, like, I don't know, just I wanted to like that final come back home scene way more than I did.
I think you're referring to the part where like Fassbender like comes down the stairs and the killer has his fucking back to Fassbender, pointing a gun at the kid or whatever. Fassbender could have tackled him, could have shot the gun out of his hand, could have, done all of these things. Instead, what does he choose to do? He walks around the table, engages in some discussion, and then has to sit down and give up his gun, for reasons. I thought that was pretty ridiculous. And then the whole thing at the end, we're like, ooh, they're on the frozen lake. They're on the ice. What's going to happen?
That was ridiculous.
If Michael Fassbender just scoots back enough, the killer will fall through the ice and die. Problem solved. Right. We're good. Except we're not. That was pretty terrible.
Although I've had the same thought on the table scene that you did initially. I'm like, why doesn't he just shoot the fucking guy? And then I'm like, so he had this garrote gun thing kind of around the woman's neck, his ex-girlfriend's neck, right? And I don't know how that thing actually works. Like if he like twitches and hits the trigger, does it like chop her head off? I got the sense that it could work like that. So maybe there was that risk. And obviously he didn't want to take that chance if he could disarm the situation.
Well, but could he see that the killer even had that around her neck from his position from behind?
When he got to the table, absolutely.
Well, yeah, when he got to the table, but he was behind the killer for 20 whole seconds while you like walked down and around. So, I mean, if I've been a
maybe
cop slash detective for 30 years. I don't know. I don't know.
If I may also add this, and maybe I'm just missing a scene. Maybe I'm not remembering something, but we had seen dismemberment, right? Up to now, we had seen dismemberment, and we had seen decapitation. We've seen all of those things. And we, as the audience, saw him using that special, like, Garrett retracting gun thing, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm missing a scene, but did Michael Fassbender, the detective, had he seen that up to that point, or did he just
no?
He only see. So for me personally, if I just saw that around the neck, I don't know that I would have immediately understood the full stakes of it. At least me personally, like I don't know that I would have understood what that weapon meant. It's like, okay, there's obviously some threat here, but what's happening? You know.
Well, but not all the more reason to not assume that you could just shoot the guy and nothing would happen.
Very fair, very fair. But I think it played for me a little bit more like that he knew exactly what was happening there, when really it was us as the audience that knew and the character didn't.
Yeah.
Right.
I can agree there. And then, so let's talk about the Val Kilmer character. Like, I have no idea what his character was, what he represented on the show, or what any of his scenes meant to the story. Do you guys? I'm still lost on that.
I don't know. I did not get a good vibe on that. Like, I know that it was tied to a previous case of some type. I couldn't figure that out.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So, full disclosure, I was getting to the point where I was a little pissed off by the movie, so I started to check out a little bit with the Val Kilmer stuff. And let me rephrase that. Not pissed off at the movie for, like, it being bad, although it was, but I was pissed off about the Val Kilmer like voice dubbing thing, and that they didn't just like reshoot, you know, his scene instead of dubbing a voiceover again. That felt really lazy to me. So that was taking me out of the Val Kilmer stuff in the moment. So let me say that. But with the Val Kilmer thing, like, it's a flashback that I think is supposed to inform like the current day killing, right? Because like the Val Kilmer character like got shot with a shotgun or something sitting in the chair, and then the Snowman killer, like, you know, shoots the head off a guy and like puts a snowman head like in the head cavity or something. So
is he the guy? So was he the other detective that actually like got shot in the head in the cabin?
Right. Yep.
And he was the dad of the other cop there, whatever, right?
I believe that's the case.
Cloudberry.
Yes, yeah. Cloudberry. Right.
See, the movie doesn't make that really that clear at all. Like, I didn't know that was
maybe
that same character.
Maybe it's part of the 15% of the script that somehow they just didn't realize
it is.
They never shot.
Yeah. I have a feeling like Val Kilmer left Norway early and they couldn't reshoot those scenes, so they just left him out. I don't know.
I
wish it had held together a little better.
But at least we got Iceman in a Snowman movie.
That's something.
Yeah.
That's something. Yeah, I just wanted more out of this. I wanted more out of the Snowman. I wanted more out of the backstory. I wanted more out of the killer. I wanted more out of that Harry hole. I really wanted to find myself wanting to explore more and more of the Harry hole, but this was not a great Harry hole experience for me.
Well, but I will say, Will, I mean, we got a leaky Harry hole there at the end amongst all that white.
Oh, that's true. That's true. There was that Harry hole was just leaking all over the place. But I mean, that's one thing. But it was just such an underwhelming Harry hole. I feel like this is not a Harry hole I want to spend any more time with.
Well, and that Harry hole vacillated between being very like tight and rigid and being very just sort of like loose and not engaged. So there's no consistency to that Harry hole, you know, and that doesn't help. Come on, Jim. Harry hole jokes.
Harry hole.
So like a Harry hole in name only, then, really.
We'll run with it. That works.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, guys, are we done with the Snowman?
We're done.
Can we put ourselves out of this?
I give the movie a little bit of credit too. It was called The Snowman. We definitely saw plenty of snowmen in this movie.
That's true.
We did see Snowman.
Mm-hmm.
So the movie had the thing that was in the title.
Mm-hmm. Whatever credit that's worth.
But I don't remember the fucking pink scarf at all.
That's
yeah.
I am looking forward to reading the book. Apparently, I do kind of want to do that. Apparently, a big part of the book is the female detective is actually one of the major suspects of it. And there's a long thing where you kind of explore that before other things happen. And I was like, well, that was not here. That wasn't in this movie. I wanted that here.
And that was disappointing too. When she got ambushed in the hotel, right? Like, I mean, she gets killed in the hotel by the killer. And I didn't know at that moment whether to be disappointed that she was probably one of the better parts of the movie was taken out of the movie too early, or that or the movie gets credit for subverting the expectation, because I actually expected her to get away. Right, she would get away, and then they would have another clue. But no, the movie kind of subverted that expectation. So again. I gave it a little credit for that.
Credit where credit is due. I like it. That's a good approach, Jim. Absolutely. And I agree. It was nice to see them kind of take a risk, but I just don't think there was enough else there.
Yeah.
By then you were checked out. I know.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's do some plugs, guys, as we look to wrap this thing up. Will, this is that wonderful part of the show where you tell our listeners something you're excited about, something you feel like they should check out or do. What do you got this week?
Yeah, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time with this one because, one, it still doesn't come out for a couple of weeks, and two, I have a feeling we're going to spend a little bit more time with it on this show, but had a chance to catch 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, the new film by Martin McDonagh, the guy that did In Bruges.
I hate you.
We got it super early for press screening here, about a month before release, which was there's another film festival happening in town that got that film, and I think it's tied to that. So I was just lucky based on proximity. But anyway, same guy that did In Bruges. It's got Frances McDormand, Woody Harrelson, Sam Rockwell, and it's this story of this woman who something bad happens to her daughter. She doesn't feel like the police are doing enough about it. So she rents these billboards outside of town, basically calling out the police on their inaction, and it causes a lot of stir within the community. It's a lot of really good heartfelt moments in this that will punch you in the gut. It's also strangely funny, despite being a very dark film at times. So I strongly recommend 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. I don't want to say any more. I have a feeling this one might make it into a episode in the future.
Very well may. All right, Jim, what have you got?
Have you guys ever heard of a place called Dawson City? Does that ring a bell to you? Anyway, I got to watch this documentary called Dawson City Frozen Time. This is a documentary. So in the Arctic Circle in the Yukon territories back in the 1920s, there was this gold rush boom town called Dawson City that kind of sprung up out of nowhere. And people came from everywhere, mostly in the U.S., but everywhere, way the fuck up there to mine for gold and stake their claims and whatever. And this city rose up out of nothing. What this movie is about is it pieces together this true story of a collection of 500 silent films that dated from the 1910s to the 1920s, which were lost for over 50 years because they were buried in an old swimming pool in Dawson City's gymnasium and frozen for years and years and years. And they dug this stuff up and found this film. And this was the nitrate film that's highly explosive and flammable. And they dug all this stuff up. So it's an amazing documentary of not just about the history of the Yukon, but about the history of film and silent film. And a lot of the times these silent films would come up to the movie houses there, and it was the end of the line for those movies. They wouldn't recirculate back into the circulation. They would just be put in storage there, and eventually at some point, no one knew what to do with them, and they just tried to bury them. And then they were dug up like 50 years later by this, historian and his wife, and they show a bunch of these movies. Just some amazing stuff to see history come to life in these movies. It's called Dawson City, Frozen Time, and I believe it's on Netflix right now.
All right.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Your pick gets a second, Jim from Denver, who says he loved the Dawson City doc. It was super bizarre, apparently. So
yeah, just the soundtrack alone was very, very unique, very ethereal, and I loved it.
Excellent. Well, glad to hear you enjoyed it so much. Hey, we just got a question from Cody, who asks, do you ever do giveaways on your podcast? Cody, interesting that you mentioned that. We sure do. We give out t-shirts and movie tickets and all kinds of stuff. In fact, we've got a big anniversary episode coming up in a couple of months with the new Star Wars movie coming out. So you can bet we'll be doing some fun stuff, probably some giveaways then, if not before. So keep an eye out for that. Maybe you'll get something, with our logo. Maybe you'll get movie tickets. I don't know. We'll see. We'll figure it out. But I want to plug this week, not Harry Hole. I feel like we already talked about Harry Hole enough. But I want to plug Stranger Things season 2, which is coming out on the 27th. Will, I see you like Kermit the Frog flailing your arms. I'm super pumped. Jim, I know you were kind of lukewarm on Stranger Things season 1.
I mean, I'll watch with you, but I'm not as rabid, I guess, as a lot.
Well, I'm freaking pumped. I can't wait, and how fitting that it's coming out just before Halloween. So we have a busy weekend. I don't know how much I'm gonna, how much of an opportunity, Jim, you and I will have to watch Stranger Things this weekend, but I'm hoping we can at least get a couple episodes in. And then, well, I don't know, man. Maybe when we're all finished, we need to have like a Stranger Things like bonus episode or something.
Oh, kind of like what we did with Steven Universe, where we have an extra thing in our feed. I like that idea quite a bit.
Yeah, that could be cool. We'll talk about that. We'll see, maybe. But don't forget, everybody, Stranger Things season 2 is back on Netflix as of October 27th. Check it out. Watch it. Maybe we'll have a bonus episode coming at you. Definitely want to engage around you guys with that. Jim Edward in the chat says he was lukewarm as well with Stranger Things, so you're not alone in feeling that way, babe. Let that soothe your soul. All thanks to Edward. Hey guys, real quick as we wrap here, let's let our listeners know where they can find us, where they can interact with us. Jim, go.
Find me on Twitter or tweet at me at JJP Out West. All one word. At JJP Out West.
All right. Awesome. And Will, how about you?
Hey, I'm on Twitter at Whatever Cove. I'm on Facebook. I'm William Lindis. Look for the one with the beard. I'm also on Letterboxd. Look for William Lindis. I'm the one with, well, I think I'm the only one named William Lindis there. So just look for that one.
There you go. And you can find me on Twitter as well at iBradPro. It's like iPad Pro, but Brad, because that's my first name. I thought it was clever at the time, guys. I've had like 12 Twitter handles because I can't make my mind up. I don't know. I'm playing with this one. We'll see if it stays. Maybe. But more reliably, you can find me on Facebook. Just search for Brad Harris. You do have to be the friend of a friend in order to add me as a friend. So, I mean, if you are a friend of a friend, I suppose you could send a blind friend request if you want to connect. That would be fun. But it's better to just send me a message first. That way I can determine that you're not like a crazy robot or a military, scammer or the Prince of Ghana or something. And you need my help like wiring money. And we can talk movies and go from there. So don't be afraid to say hello. You can also find our show on Facebook. Just search for Movie Bears Podcast. We post all kinds of cool stuff, from episode links to fun news bits. Sometimes we do listener polls, contests and giveaways to Cody's question. So keep an eye out there. You can also find the show on Twitter at MB Podcast. MB from Movie Bears Podcast. Get it? So feel free, add us, tweet at us. We'd love to engage with you guys. Next week, we're gonna have to talk about what we're doing for next week. I'm sure it's gonna be something fun. Tune in. We ostensibly, as of now, are going to be in our normal Monday time slot. So we won't be recording on Halloween like we were last year when Jim and I had to keep like getting up to go run to the door to give candy. So I'm actually a little sad about that because that was kind of fun. But I'm sure we'll find other ways to make it fun. Right, guys?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's going to be a blast.
Yeah, for sure. All right, everyone. Well, we'll see you next week. Take care. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.